Dad, they said I could watch my show now. The game's over. Put it back. Griffin's team is in overtime. But we agreed I could watch at 8. Crash. My father fractured my eye socket with a dinner plate because I switched channels during Stepbrother's game. Hi, I'm Alistair Merrick. Today I'm going to tell you my story. But before I continue, please like, share, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. I never imagined that changing the television channel would result in my father fracturing my eye socket with a ceramic dinner plate. But that's exactly what happened when I dared to claim something that had been promised to me in a house where my stepbrother's desires always came first. This isn't just about one violent outburst. It's about years of being treated as less important, less worthy, and less deserving than the golden child my father chose to prioritize over his own biological son. My parents divorced when I was 8 years old. It was messy and painful, with custody battles and lawyers and me caught in the middle of their anger at each other. Eventually, they settled on joint custody. Weekdays with my mother, weekends and summers with my father. For 2 years, it was just me and Dad on those weekends. We'd go to movies, cook together, play video games. He wasn't perfect, but he was present and engaged. I looked forward to our time together, treasuring those moments of connection. Then he met Lorelei at a work function. She was recently divorced with a son named Griffin, who was 6 months younger than me. They dated for about a year before Dad told me they were getting married and I'd have a stepbrother. "You'll love having someone to hang out with," Dad said enthusiastically. "Griffin's into sports just like you. It'll be great." I was skeptical but tried to be optimistic. Maybe having a stepbrother would be fun. It wasn't. Griffin and I had almost nothing in common except our age. He was obsessed with hockey and football, spending every free moment watching games or playing in leagues. I preferred reading, coding, and documentaries. He was loud and aggressive. I was quiet and analytical. We were fundamentally different people forced into a family dynamic neither of us wanted. The problem started immediately after Dad and Lorelei got married. Griffin's sports became the center of the household. Every weekend was scheduled around his games and practices. The TV was always tuned to whatever sport he was following. Family dinners revolved around discussing his performance and upcoming matches. I tried to be supportive at first, attending his games and congratulating him on wins. But my interests were completely ignored. When I asked if we could watch a documentary I'd been excited about, Dad would say, "Not now, Alistair. The game is on." "But you said we could watch it this weekend." "Griffin's team is playing. This is important to him." "What about what's important to me?" "Don't be selfish. Family supports each other." But family only seemed to mean supporting Griffin. My achievements in school, my progress in coding competitions, my interests, none of it mattered as much as Griffin's sports. Lorelei made it worse. She actively positioned Griffin as the more important child. She'd make elaborate meals for his game days, but serve frozen dinners on normal nights. She'd buy him expensive equipment and new clothes while telling Dad they couldn't afford to replace my worn-out shoes. She'd brag about Griffin to anyone who'd listen while barely acknowledging my existence. Dad went along with all of it. I watched him transform from someone who'd valued education and intellect into someone whose entire identity became wrapped up in his stepson's athletic achievements. It was like Griffin's success reflected on Dad in a way my accomplishments never could. "Dad, I won first place in the regional coding competition," I told him excitedly one Saturday. "That's great, buddy," he said, without looking up from the hockey game Griffin was watching. "Hey, Griffin, great play. Did you see that, Lorelei?" I stood there holding my trophy, invisible. The favoritism extended to discipline. Griffin could do no wrong. He'd break my things, use my computer without permission, eat my food, and face no consequences. But if I complained or defended myself, I was being difficult and not trying hard enough to be a good brother. "Griffin broke my headphones," I told Dad once. "It was an accident. Stop being so precious about your stuff." "They were expensive. I saved for 3 months to buy them." "Then you should have put them somewhere safe. This is on you." But when I accidentally knocked over Griffin's sports drink at dinner, Dad made me pay for the replacement and grounded me for being careless and disrespectful. The television became a constant source of conflict. Griffin believed he had automatic rights to it whenever there was a game on, which was basically always. Hockey season, football season, basketball season, baseball season. There was always some sport he needed to watch. I'd ask for time to watch my shows or educational programs. We'd negotiate schedules. But inevitably, Griffin would decide he needed the TV for something, and Dad would side with him. Alistair, let Griffin watch the game. You can watch your show later. We agreed I could have the TV from 7 to 8. That was the deal. Plans change. Be flexible. I learned that be flexible meant give Griffin whatever he wants. The violence started gradually. Dad had never been physically aggressive before the remarriage, but something shifted. He'd grab my arm too hard when he was angry. He'd shove me when I didn't move fast enough. Once, he slapped me across the face when I talked back to Lorelei. "You don't disrespect my wife," he said, his face red with anger. "She called me lazy for not wanting to go to Griffin's game. I have homework." "I don't care. You apologize to her right now." The slap left a mark. My mother noticed it when she picked me up for the school week and demanded to know what happened. I lied, saying I'd been hit by a ball at school. I was embarrassed and didn't want to admit my father had hit me. That was my first mistake. I should have told her the truth. The incident that changed everything happened on a Friday evening in February. I was 15, Griffin was almost 15. We were at Dad's house for the weekend. Griffin had a hockey game that afternoon that had run late, so we'd grabbed fast food on the way home instead of having dinner. Dad had promised me that after the game, I could watch a special documentary that was airing at 8 o'clock. It was about computer programming pioneers, and I'd been looking forward to it for weeks. He'd written it on the calendar and everything. We got home around 7:30. Griffin immediately turned on the TV to watch post-game analysis. I waited patiently, doing homework at the kitchen table, watching the clock. At 8 o'clock, I walked into the living room. "Griffin, it's 8. Dad said I could watch my documentary now." "The analysis isn't over. Wait 20 minutes. "But Dad promised me 8 o'clock. The documentary starts now. So record it and watch it later." "We don't have a DVR. I have to watch it live." Griffin ignored me, turning up the volume. I looked to Dad, who was scrolling through his phone on the couch. "Dad, you said 8 o'clock. That was our agreement." "Let Griffin finish watching, Alistair. Your show can wait." "It's live. It can't wait, and you promised." "Don't take that tone with me." I was so frustrated I was shaking. Every single time, Griffin got what he wanted and my needs didn't matter. I'd asked nicely, followed the rules, waited my turn, and it still wasn't enough. I grabbed the remote from the coffee table and changed the channel. "Dad, they said I could watch my show now. The game's over." Griffin jumped up. "Put it back! My team is in overtime!" "But we agreed I could watch at 8. Dad stood up, his face contorted with rage. I'd never seen him this angry. He grabbed a dinner plate from the coffee table, one of the ceramic ones we'd been eating off of earlier, and before I could react, he swung it at my face. Crash! The plate hit me directly on my left eye socket. I heard the crack before I felt the pain, a sickening sound of ceramic meeting bone. Then the pain hit, white hot and overwhelming. I fell backward, my hands instinctively going to my face. I felt blood, lots of it, streaming down my face. My eye wouldn't open. The pain was so intense I couldn't think, couldn't speak, just made this horrible gasping sound. Through my good eye, I saw Dad standing there, the broken plate still in his hand, looking shocked. Lorelei rushed in from the kitchen. Griffin backed away for once in his life, looking scared. "What did you do?" Lorelei screamed at Dad. "Oh my God, Alistair, let me see." Dad dropped the plate. "He shouldn't have. I didn't mean to." I was bleeding heavily, blood soaking my shirt. My left eye was swelling shut rapidly, and the pain was getting worse instead of better. I tried to stand, but fell, dizzy and disoriented. Lorelei grabbed her phone. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No!" Dad grabbed her wrist. "We'll take him to urgent care. An ambulance will involve police. He needs a hospital. Look at him." I was crying now from pain and shock and betrayal. My father had just hit me in the face with a plate hard enough to break it. Over a TV channel, they ended up driving me to the emergency room. The whole ride there, Dad kept saying, It was an accident. You startled me. I didn't mean to hit you that hard." But I'd seen his face. It wasn't an accident. It was rage that I dared to defy him. At the hospital, the doctors were immediately concerned. They took me back for x-rays and a CT scan. A nurse named Octavia Rains asked me what happened while my father waited outside. I changed the TV channel, I said through tears, my voice thick from the swelling. My dad hit me with a plate. Her expression changed. Your father did this to you? I nodded. She left the room and came back with a doctor and a social worker named Dashiell Price. Alistair, I need you to tell me exactly what happened, Dashiell said gently, and I need to know if this is the first time something like this has happened. I told them everything. The years of favoritism, the escalating aggression, the previous times Dad had grabbed or shoved or hit me. I told them about being invisible in my own family, about always coming second to Griffin, about being blamed for everything and valued for nothing. The doctor, Dr. Helena Kingsley, came back with the scan results. You have a fractured orbital bone. That's your eye socket. You'll need surgery to repair it. You also have a severe concussion and lacerations that need stitches. Will I be able to see? I asked, terrified. We think so. The eye itself doesn't appear damaged, but we need to monitor you carefully. The swelling needs to go down before we can be sure. They admitted me overnight for observation before surgery. The police came to take my statement. Officer Winona Thatcher was kind but thorough, photographing my injuries and documenting everything I told her. We're arresting your father for felony assault with a deadly weapon, she told me. A ceramic plate counts as a weapon when used this way. He'll be charged and held pending bail. They also called my mother, who'd been listed as my emergency contact. She arrived at the hospital at midnight, furious and terrified. When she saw my face, swollen, bruised, stitched, and bandaged, she started crying. My baby, what did he do to you? I told her everything I'd told the social worker and police. She held my hand through the whole story, getting angrier with every detail. You're never going back there, ever. I'm filing for full custody tomorrow. The surgery the next morning went well. Dr. Kingsley repaired the fractured bone and assured me that my vision should be fine once the swelling went down. I'd have a scar near my eyebrow and would need to wear protective glasses for a few months while I healed. But I'd recover. Dad was arraigned on assault charges while I was still in the hospital. He pled not guilty, claiming it had been an accident and I'd exaggerated everything. His lawyer tried to paint me as a problem child who'd provoked him, but the evidence was overwhelming. My injuries were severe and consistent with being struck with significant force. Multiple witnesses, Lorelei Griffin and the paramedics, confirmed Dad had hit me with a plate. And the social worker's report documenting the years of physical and emotional abuse was damning. The criminal trial happened 4 months later. I had to testify about the incident and the history of mistreatment. It was humiliating and painful, but necessary. My mother's lawyer also testified, showing the court communications where Dad had agreed to specific TV schedules and then violated them. She showed the calendar entry where Dad had written that I could watch my documentary at 8 o'clock. Griffin testified reluctantly, admitting that he'd been watching TV past the agreed time and that Dad had promised me the 8 o'clock slot. He also admitted, under oath, that Dad had hit me before. How many times did you see your stepfather hit or shove Alistair? The prosecutor asked. Griffin looked uncomfortable. Maybe 10 times? I didn't really count. And did you ever see him hit you or your mother that way? No. So this physical aggression was directed only at Alistair. Yeah, I guess. Lorelei's testimony was more defensive. She tried to minimize the abuse and claimed she'd never noticed anything wrong. But when confronted with specific incidents, like the time Dad slapped me and left a mark, she couldn't deny knowledge. The jury found Dad guilty of felony assault and child endangerment. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. He was also ordered to pay my medical bills and attend anger management counseling. Mr. Merrick, you fractured your son's eye socket over a television remote, the judge said. You showed a pattern of physical abuse and favoritism that created a toxic environment for your child. You're fortunate his injuries weren't worse or that you weren't facing more serious charges. Dad looked at me during sentencing, and I couldn't read his expression. Regret? Anger? I didn't care anymore. He'd made his choices, and now he'd live with the consequences. My mother was granted full custody, with 0 visitation rights for Dad. He was prohibited from contacting me until I turned 18, and even then, only if I consented. The civil lawsuit we filed resulted in additional damages for medical expenses, pain and suffering, and future therapy costs. Dad's insurance covered most of it, but he was left financially devastated. Griffin and I never spoke again after the trial. Lorelei tried once to reach out through a third party, saying Griffin wanted to apologize. My mother shut it down immediately. Her son stood by and watched your son get abused for years. He doesn't get to apologize now for witnessing it and saying nothing. My eye healed, though I still have a small scar and some lingering sensitivity. I wear glasses now, partly for protection, and partly because the injury affected my vision slightly. But I'm alive, I'm safe, and I'm with a parent who actually values me. The psychological healing took longer. I had nightmares about that night for years. I flinched whenever someone moved suddenly near me. I developed anxiety around conflict and asserting my needs. Therapy helped. My therapist, Dr. Cassia Northfield, specialized in trauma from family violence. She helped me understand that the abuse wasn't my fault, that wanting to watch a TV show I'd been promised wasn't selfish or provocative, that my father's violence was about his own issues, not anything I'd done wrong. I'm 23 now, finishing my degree in computer science at a good university. I'm doing well academically and professionally, with internship offers from major tech companies. I have friends, hobbies, and a life I've built for myself. Dad was released from prison after serving 2 years. I heard through extended family that he and Lorelei divorced shortly after his release. Apparently, she couldn't handle the financial strain and stigma of being married to a convicted child abuser. He's living in a different state, working construction, alone. He tried to contact me when I turned 18, sending a letter to my mother's house. It was full of excuses and self-pity, claiming he'd overreacted, but that I'd pushed him too far. He never actually apologized or took real responsibility. I threw it away unread after the first paragraph. The man who fractured my eye socket with a dinner plate because I changed the TV channel isn't my father anymore. That relationship died the night he chose violence over his own son. Griffin apparently played hockey in college for a year before washing out. I saw his social media once. He still posts about sports constantly. I wonder sometimes if he ever thinks about what he witnessed, if he feels any guilt about the role his privileged position played in my abuse. But mostly I don't think about any of them. They're part of my past, a painful chapter that's closed. I'm focused on my future, surrounded by people who respect me and value my boundaries. The scar near my eye is a permanent reminder of that night. Some people ask about it, and I've learned to decide case by case whether to share the real story. It's a reminder that I survived, that I'm stronger than what happened to me, and that I chose to protect myself even when it meant sending my own father to prison. So, here's my question for you. If a parent seriously injured you in a moment of rage over something trivial, would you testify against them in court knowing it would send them to prison? Or would you minimize what happened to protect them from consequences?